Hi, this is Arthur Carmazzi, best-selling author and currently ranked as one of the world's top 10 thought leaders in organizational culture and leadership. And welcome to the Nights of Transformation. Today we are going to be doing part one of a three-part series on the origins of corporate culture. How is a corporate culture actually created? And today we're going to be looking at one of the three origins of corporate culture. Of course, there are a few elements of that one origin that we're going to be looking at today. And the first origin we're going to be talking about is leadership. How does leadership affect corporate culture? Now, it is obvious that a leader drives a company, and the process and style by which they drive a company will definitely affect organizational culture. But here's the thing. When an organization starts and you have a particular type of leader, if the leader changes, does the culture completely follow it? No, right? And this is where there is oftentimes conflict between new leaders and the existing culture when new people come into an existing organization, or there are mergers of organizations. So let's look at the first thing of how a leader affects an organizational culture. And the first thing is basically their primary emotional drivers. See, all of us have emotional drives that are, well, essentially more important than others. For example, some of us may be very security and control oriented. We want to make sure we know what's going on, and oftentimes we use that to control things. And other times it's all about kind of connecting with people and being around people and kind of enjoying people. Sometimes it's about finishing things, it's about achievement. Sometimes it's about kind of, being recognized, okay? So we've got a lot of different elements that are going to affect how a leader is going to drive corporate culture by the primary emotional drives or primary motivators they have. Let's say, for example, you've got a leader who has a high emotional drive for excellence. That means that, well, basically everything has got to be really close to perfect. It's got to be, way up here, really top notch, everything else. Now, that's super cool unless the rest of the organization and everything else is not set up for it, in which case then there is conflict. Now, let's say, for example, a leader needs to feel like they're in control. And they need, this kind of sense of security to make sure, because they know lots of stuff and they want to make sure that everybody else does it in the same way they do, because, well, pretty much they think that they're, have this kind of emotional drive for significance plus this emotional drive for security and control. So basically they think, hey, I'm right, and, I should make sure that other people follow my right way. Now, is that going to affect culture? Of course it is. Now, you have other people that are very growth-oriented, right? So the leader who is growth-oriented and maybe less security-oriented is going to say, hey, even if they do have this kind of sense of recognition, it's like, hey, we've got this recognition, I've got this recognition, let's do something super cool that's different. And especially if the leaders will have a sense of love and belonging where they actually care about people, want to be around people, want to connect with people. And basically, when you have growth and some love and belonging, then you're going to kind of create more of an innovation culture, especially if you have a sense of recognition. Now, oftentimes, remember that people still think that recognition is bad. It's not, okay? Because if you don't have a need to be recognized, you don't do anything different. You're just kind of like following the flow, and nothing awesome happens because, well, why should you? You don't need to be recognized, right? So, recognition is not bad. The only time it's bad is when you make other people small in order for you to feel better about yourself. Okay, now, of course, the second part is, how does a leader's values affect organizational culture? Now, a leader's values is basically a combination of emotional drives. So, for example, they may value the idea of family. Now, this could actually be family within their house, or it could be the idea of family of everybody in the organization. Or they could value basically KPIs and structure and objectives and making sure that everything is super organized, right? So depending on their values, there can be leaders who have very, very strong religious ideas and follow those religious ideas within the organization, and even in some cases where religion and company are sometimes kind of connected, okay? So depending on the values of the leader, this is going to affect organizational culture. And of course, the final one is how a leader's brain process affects organizational culture. Now, if you've been following the other show, Where's Your Brain? And if you haven't, you got to check it out because it's super cool, okay? We are talking about the colored brain process, or essentially the brain's ambiguity relief, and how colored brain identifies and measures the brain's ambiguity relief process, which basically is how a brain gets clarity in order to essentially deal with the world around it. Now, a brain process, say for example, that is chaotic, which is not bad, okay, it's just different, okay? A chaotic brain process, a leader with a chaotic brain process is not going to necessarily be super organized and super structured in the organization. And so therefore the organization is not going to be super structured and organized. There's going to be a lot of leeway, a lot of ways to kind of go try this kind of thing, depending on, again, primary motivators and brain process combined, right? Now, of course, on the other hand, let's say the leader is a linear process, red brain person, okay, in which case then they're going to want to really see kind of the structure. Everything's got to be kind of in a way where it can make sense and it's logical, and there is like, okay, this happens and there's going to be a lot of policies that are going to support that, right? So brain color is also going to be a major factor to policies and, for that matter, red tape. So for example, if you've got relational processing and you've got a leader that's got relational processing, they're going to need a lot of details to really kind of get clarity and have multiple options. So there's going to be a lot of policies related to making sure that you are thorough in your investigation of various things before decisions can be made, which of course sometimes can slow things down if it's not thought through properly. And of course, you know, the intuitive processing, where you just kind of like, hey, you know, we just kind of feel how it, you know, see how it is, and you just kind of have this whole intuition, which case, like Jack Welch wrote, from the gut, all right? So, different leaders are going to have different brain processes. They're also going to have different emotional drivers. You combine these, and then you kind of get some values in there, and you are going to be affecting organizational culture. Now, if you want to find out a little bit more about your organizational culture, please do go to cultureevolution.com. Take the free culture assessment so that you kind of find out what's going on in your organizational culture. And of course, if you have any questions about organizational culture or leading organizational culture, please go ahead and email us at support@directivecommunication.com, and I will be sure to make a video to answer your questions too. This is Arthur Carmazzi wishing you great success. Stay tuned for the next part 2 on the second element or the second origin of how organizational culture is formed. See you next time.